What's happening, folks? Back with another Depeche Mode documentary. Once again, big shout out to Stefan, who has sent me a number of these. Indeed, there's more after I finish downloading the ones that are already available, so this is going to be one heck of a journey. I've already learned a whole lot more about one of my favorite bands of all time, who I've been following since I was a very little kid, in the last year and a half since I've been doing Depeche Mode reactions. But even saying that, the first documentary revealed a great deal more and provided, visual and conversational substance to their earliest phase. So yeah, the first documentary was very informative, and it was just really nostalgic to hear a number of these tunes I've known for so long, but also to see some of the early live performances. That was fantastic. And once again, shout out to Han Solo and others who've been involved in helping me through the early material and just understanding, the stuff behind the scenes as we go through the Depeche Mode catalog in my audio reactions. In any case, we're going to watch the documentary for A Broken Frame, their second proper album. Many people will know this is right after Vince Clarke has left and before Alan Wilder came in, though my understanding is that by the time they were touring for this album, Alan came in for to essentially be on stage and to do live tour performance with them, but it wasn't until the next album when he began writing material for them. In any case, I'm a big fan of this album. You may not be surprised. I mentioned it before. Pretty much all their early albums are hugely nostalgic with me personally, but I think also very good. So we're going to hear, as you see in the title of the documentary up here, this is a Broken Frame documentary, and the title of it is The Beginning of Their So-Called Dark Phase. I like the use of so-called, which tends to cast doubt on whatever follows it. So in any case, let's find out what it's all about. This is a Depeche Mode documentary about A Broken Frame, their second studio album, and it's called The Beginning of Their So-Called Dark Phase. And once more, shout out to Stefan for sharing this.
Depeche Mode had probably been going, as far as the media were concerned, as far as I was concerned, no more than 9 months, maybe 10 months. And Dan said, I've got to tell you some news. Vince is leaving the band. I went, he can't be leaving the band. We've only just got there. We've just had 3 hit records. And Vince is leaving.
My initial reaction was hell. There was, is he coming back? Is he not? Has he gone for good?
The deed was done. It's like packing in your girlfriend, You can't go back,
Yes, he's definitely gone for good. Then there was a period from our side of stuff.
I would just like to point out that I once had a relationship with a woman for like 6 years, but there was on and off at multiple points. So you definitely can go back. It just, maybe for some people it's not that way.
Do you think Depeche are going to continue?
I think at press people were, they're just going to implode now. Because, what's going to happen? There's not going to be a Depeche Mode. And I remember people being very interested in what Vince was going to do and Vince's next project.
He announced it at such an odd time. I'm not even sure if the album had been released.
It's like, what the hell are you doing? You've got the sort of opportunities that most people would kill for.
That's really clever to use that lyric at that time with that imagery.
I was just being a miserable bastard, I think that I was going to do something. We started bickering and there were more arguments, especially when we were in the tour bus. And I just got fed up with it, really.
He came to me and he said, I don't think this is something I want to do, and I don't like all the questions we get asked. I don't like doing interviews. I don't like doing TV. I didn't like touring. He said all these things, and I was like, Vince, that's what we're going to be doing.
I think the band were really pissed off. I know they were, I think that because they felt I'd left them in the lurch.
I think he just felt that he could do it on his own.
When I made the decision to leave Depeche, it was, I did think that I wouldn't be recording again. I was going to get a job, actually. But I did a demo of Alison Moyet, played it to Daniel, and Daniel just about showed enough interest.
And then the next thing we knew was, Vince and Alison, and we had this, as a PR company, we had Yazoo to kind of contend with and work with as well.
The success.
Everyone will know the story, but for those of us here in the US, they were called Yaz because the company which inspired Vince to name the group Yazoo actually filed some lawsuit to prevent them from using it on their releases here. So all the records and eventually CDs that people had here of Vince and Allison were labeled as Yaz. I remember there was someone in my reactions who didn't believe that. They're like, "What are you saying, Yaz?" And I was like, "No, that's really what they were called here." And he was still skeptical, and so I linked to a Depeche Mode to a Yaz page on Discogs, because Discogs, it has all the different regional releases, and it was one from the US where it says clearly at the top Yaz, and he was like, "Wait, what? That is crazy. I never do that." But it's funny that Vince thought he was going to go back to being a working Joe, 9 to 5.
The success of Yazoo was incredible. It was very difficult to think that one day, at this time, Depeche, in fact, will be one day much bigger.
In some ways, for Mute, it must have been a blessing because Vince went on to become successful.
You don't need that.
It was probably Daniel who actually told him to leave.
That's so funny. Oh no, they really don't need, or you really don't need them.
Daniel was kind of, I don't know whether by design or by accident, was fairly good at shepherding the situation.
Everybody was knocked back, but I don't think anybody felt that it was the end of the band. In fact, the band in particular were very determined to move on,
I remember Dan's exact word. He said, "It's going to be all right, Neil. Don't worry, it's going to be all right. Martin can write some songs." And I thought, oh, God, what are we doing?
It really didn't sort of worry us that much. It should have worried every other band when your main songwriter departs. But we didn't even think about it. It was just, we're carrying on, yeah.
Martin looking very young Einstein there.
We discussed what we were going to do about replacing Vince, and we thought, or the band thought, that there wouldn't be a straight replacement initially because to kind of draft somebody into the band, but they needed an extra keyboard player for live.
We put an advert in The Enemy for synthesizer player under 21.
I had been in and out of several bands.
The man, the myth, the legend.
In the period leading up to my joining. At that time, I was just sort of looking around for another job, something that was going to pay the wages. And there was this advert in the Melody Maker. And I kind of almost knew who it was immediately, even though it didn't say from the advert, because I'd just read somewhere the week before that they'd lost a member. And I thought, oh, it's probably Depeche Mode, even though I didn't know that much about them at the time.
We auditioned at Blackwing, usual, and all these strange and wonderful characters showed up, and they were all, dressed up to the nines but couldn't play. And then Al came along and could play anything. We thought we'd really get him by asking him to play a bass line and a melody at the same time, and he did it. And we were like, wow, this guy's amazing.
When I went to the initial audition, it did seem very simple what they were asking me to do, very simple one-line tunes and a bit of backing vocal. But apparently many people had struggled to do that, and I didn't.
And I think they were a bit intimidated by him as well because he was such a good keyboard player. They were struggling playing the notes. He was just kind of, reading the newspaper and playing at the same time.
Secret gardens, not so secret anymore. No, my secret garden.
So he was in, and I think we paid him something ridiculous, something like 100 quid a week or something. You know, we gave him 100 quid a week for like the first couple of years.
Like even in the 80s, like £400 a month, can you make that work? I'm not sure.